How much energy have you wasted on pointless arguments? How many times have you found yourself trapped in conflicts that only drain you, leaving you exhausted and frustrated? There's a hidden power that few people truly master, yet it has the potential to change your life completely. The power of ignoring. This isn't about indifference, it's about wisdom. Because sometimes the greatest act of intelligence isn't proving you're right. It's not reacting at all. Today, you'll find out why. The trap of reaction. From an early age, we're taught that if someone attacks us, we must defend ourselves. If someone challenges us, we need to prove we're right. But what if that's exactly what the other person wants? Think about it for a moment. When someone insults you, when they throw a nasty comment your way, are they really trying to understand your point of view? No. They just want a reaction. They want to see that they got under your skin because that gives them power. And every time we fall into that trap, we hand over our energy to someone who doesn't deserve it. It's like being on a boat, and instead of continuing to sail forward, we stop every time someone throws a rock at us just to pick it up and throw it back. We don't even realize that by doing this, we're wasting time, drifting off course, and exhausting ourselves over something meaningless. The worst part? This reaction has become automatic. The moment we feel challenged, we lash out without thinking. It's like a reflex. Someone says something hurtful, and before we know it, we're caught in a heated argument, raising our voices, defending ourselves, desperately trying to prove our point. But what do we actually gain from this? How many arguments have ended with both sides shaking hands and saying, "Wow, that was great. We totally understand each other now"? Never. Because most conflicts aren't about understanding, they're about ego. Ego wants to defend itself. It wants to win. It wants to prove superiority. But real strength doesn't come from proving anything. It comes from not needing to. There's an old Buddhist story about a man who was insulted in the street. Instead of reacting, he simply smiled and walked away. A bystander asked why he hadn't responded, and the man said, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to take it, to whom does the gift still belong?" That gift is other people's poison, their criticism, their attacks, their need to dominate. And without realizing it, most of us accept that poison instantly. Every time we respond to a provocation without thinking, we're allowing someone else's words to dictate our emotions. But it doesn't have to be this way. You don't have to react to everything. You don't have to engage in every battle. There's something incredibly powerful in learning to ignore, not out of indifference, but out of wisdom, out of the deep understanding that not everything deserves your energy. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is nothing. Just observe. Watch how someone tries to provoke you, and don't give them what they're looking for. Notice how they expect a reaction, and give them silence instead. That's when the power shifts. Because the one who doesn't react, the one who refuses to be pulled into the drama, is the one who truly holds control. Why do we argue so much? If you throw a stone into a pond, the water ripples for a moment, but then it returns to stillness. It doesn't hold on to the disturbance. It doesn't resist. It simply flows. But humans are different. We don't just react when provoked. We actively seek conflict, often without even realizing it. Why? Because we've been conditioned to argue as if it were necessary, as if proving we're right somehow makes us stronger. But the truth is, most arguments aren't about truth at all. They're about validation. When someone contradicts us, we don't just hear a different opinion. We feel like our identity is being questioned, and that makes us uncomfortable. So we fight back. We argue not to understand, but to defend who we believe we are, as if losing an argument meant losing a part of ourselves. But if you look closely, you'll notice something interesting. Most conflicts don't come from a genuine search for understanding. They come from unresolved emotions. A person who's had a bad day is more likely to pick a fight. Someone who feels insecure will try to bring others down. More often than not, arguments aren't about the actual topic. They're about the baggage people carry inside them. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. If that baggage is filled with anger, frustration, or fear, and you engage in their game, you end up absorbing their energy. What started as a simple disagreement turns into an emotional battlefield. At some point, the original point of discussion becomes irrelevant. It's no longer about who's right. It's just about winning. But winning what exactly? What do you gain from winning an argument when the other person wasn't even listening in the first place? Nothing, just more exhaustion, more tension, more distance. We get caught in endless debates with our partners, our friends, complete strangers on the internet, and by the end of the day, we're drained. And for what? Nothing has changed. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from attachment. And so often we're far too attached to our opinions, to our need to be understood, to the belief that if someone disagrees with us, we must have failed. But what if we let go of that attachment? What if we stopped seeing every disagreement as a personal attack? Because the truth is, you don't need everyone to agree with you. You don't need to convince anyone for your truth to remain valid. There is something incredibly freeing about realizing this. And this is where the power of non-reaction comes in. It's not about silencing yourself or avoiding meaningful conversations. It's about learning to recognize the difference between a discussion that can lead to growth and one that will only drain your energy. It's about knowing when to speak and when to walk away. Because ignoring something isn't always a sign of indifference. Sometimes it's a sign of wisdom. And when you learn to ignore what doesn't deserve your attention, you begin to unlock something even more powerful, the art of the non-response. The art of the non-response. There is a power in silence that most people don't understand. In a world where everyone feels the need to react, to defend themselves, to justify their opinions, choosing not to respond is an act of self-mastery. Ignoring doesn't mean surrendering. It means refusing to play a game where no one truly wins. Imagine someone standing in front of you, shouting, waiting for you to shout back. But instead of reacting, you remain still. You don't flinch. You don't change your expression. That person grows frustrated, raises their voice even more, trying to provoke a reaction. But you don't give them one. Eventually, their energy runs out, and their anger dissolves into nothing. That is the art of the non-response. Most of the time, people aren't looking for a real conversation. They're looking for a reaction. They want to see you lose control, raise your voice, scramble for words. It's like they're casting a fishing line, hoping you'll bite. And the best way to win that game, simply don't play. This isn't about repressing yourself or pretending not to care. It's about observing before you act. Ask yourself, does this deserve my energy? Will this discussion lead anywhere, or will it just drag me into an endless cycle? Because every time you choose to respond, you are investing your attention. And attention is one of the most valuable things you have. The ego tells us that if we don't respond, we're losing. That if someone attacks us and we don't fight back, it means they've won. But the truth is, nothing is more powerful than showing that no one can shake you. Calmness disarms anyone. There's a saying in Buddhist philosophy, the wind can stir up dust, but it cannot move a mountain. When you practice the art of the non-response, you become that mountain. It doesn't mean you don't feel emotions or that nothing matters to you. It means you decide which battles are worth fighting and which ones don't deserve a second of your peace. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Not because you have nothing to say, but because your silence speaks louder than words. When someone tries to provoke you and doesn't get the reaction they expect, they realize they have no control over you. And when people see they can't manipulate you with words, they stop trying. But there's something deeper in this practice. It doesn't just protect you from unnecessary conflict, it strengthens your mind. When you train yourself to observe without reacting, you start to notice that most of your emotions are just passing impulses. Anger, frustration, the need to defend yourself. None of it lasts. If you let it pass without acting on it, it disappears. The non-response isn't just a technique for avoiding arguments, it's a path to inner freedom. When you stop depending on the opinions of others, when you no longer need to validate yourself in every conversation, you start experiencing a level of peace that can't be bought. And in that state of calm, something powerful emerges. Clarity. When you're not caught up in meaningless arguments, you have more time to think, to create, to focus on what truly matters. And most importantly, you start to understand something that will change your life forever. Not everything deserves your attention. Because when you learn to stay silent at the right moments, you also learn when to speak. And that is where true wisdom lies. Ignoring for the sake of ignoring is pointless. But knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, that is power. When to speak and when to stay silent. Not everything deserves a response, but that doesn't mean we should stay silent in every situation. There are moments when silence gives us peace, but there are also moments when speaking up can change everything. The key is knowing when your voice adds value and when it's best to hold it back. The problem is that we often get this balance wrong. We speak when we shouldn't, and we stay silent when we should be saying something. We let emotions take over. We react to provocations without thinking, but we hesitate when something truly important needs to be addressed. And that imbalance creates inner conflict. Buddhism teaches that before speaking, we should ask ourselves 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If the answer to any of these is no, then maybe silence is the wiser choice. But when all 3 answers are yes, then your words can become a powerful tool. If someone attacks you just to provoke a reaction, you don't need to defend yourself. Not because you lack arguments, but because you know the discussion will lead nowhere. But if someone is genuinely trying to understand, if there is an opportunity for real dialogue, then it's worth speaking. Because silence, when used wisely, is not indifference, it's strategy. Think about it. How many times have you tried to explain something to someone who simply refuses to listen? No matter how well you express your ideas, that person has already decided not to change their mind. So why waste your energy? You don't need to correct everyone. You don't need to win every conversation. Some battles, even if you win them, aren't worth fighting. But there are also times when you should speak. When someone crosses a boundary, when your words can prevent harm, when speaking up can help someone else, that's when silence is no longer an option. The problem is that we often confuse ego with truth. We think speaking is necessary because our pride is at stake, but the ego isn't looking for truth, it's looking to dominate. And when you realize that, you start letting go of the need to respond to everything. Not everything deserves your voice, but some things need to be said. Knowing the difference is what separates an impulsive reaction from a wise response. And when you master that balance, your life changes. You stop wasting energy on empty conflicts and start using your words where they truly matter. This is where everything starts to make sense. Because once you learn to stay silent when it's not worth speaking and to speak when it truly matters, you unlock something even more powerful: how to deactivate conflict before it even begins. And that is one of the most valuable skills you can ever develop. Strategies to avoid conflict. Many people think that avoiding an argument means giving in, staying silent, or walking away. But there's a smarter way to do it, one that doesn't involve avoidance, but strategy. The truth is, most arguments don't start with logic, they start with emotion. When someone attacks you, they're not always speaking from a place of reason. They might be acting from frustration, anger, or insecurity. And if you respond with that same energy, the clash is inevitable. But if you break the cycle before it escalates, the argument loses its power. There are several ways to do this. One of the most effective is using phrases that don't fuel confrontation. Instead of getting defensive, you can say things like, "I see your point," or "Let's talk about this later when we're both calm." These kinds of responses don't mean you agree, but they also don't give the other person more fuel to keep pushing. Another key strategy is not taking everything personally. People often argue over issues that have nothing to do with you. They're just looking for a place to unload their frustrations. If you refuse to engage, they have no reason to keep fighting. A neutral response like, "I'm not going to argue about this right now," or even total silence can make them realize their attempt at conflict isn't working. Humor can also be a powerful tool. If someone tries to provoke you, expecting you to snap, but instead you respond with humor or stay calm, you take away their power. Not because you're making light of the situation, but because you're refusing to let their negativity control your reaction. The most important thing to remember is that you are never obligated to participate in every conflict someone tries to start. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to convince anyone. You can walk away from an argument without saying a single word, and that doesn't mean you lost. On the contrary, it means you've gained something even more valuable: your peace. When you start applying these strategies, you realize that true power isn't in winning arguments, it's in not needing them. And when you reach that level, you unlock something even greater: the freedom to detach from anything that doesn't add value to your life. That's when everything shifts. That's when you start living with true tranquility. The freedom of not getting hooked. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that nothing external can disturb your inner peace. That no matter what people say, no matter what opinions they throw at you, no matter how much someone tries to provoke you, it simply doesn't reach you. Not because you're avoiding reality, but because you've developed something far more powerful: a mind that cannot be shaken. This is what happens when you master the art of not getting hooked. It's not about ignoring everything or pretending not to care. It's about truly understanding that most conflicts, most arguments, most provocations, none of them actually deserve your energy. And once you reach that realization, you free yourself from a weight that most people carry without even realizing it. The truth is, most people live at the mercy of what happens around them. If someone insults them, their mood shifts instantly. If someone disagrees with them, they feel personally attacked. If someone criticizes them, they feel the need to respond. In other words, their peace is entirely dependent on the actions of others. But when you stop reacting, when you stop letting external circumstances dictate your internal state, something incredible happens. You take back control. Think about it. How many of your worst days have been bad not because of what actually happened, but because of how you reacted to it? How much unnecessary stress have you created just by engaging in situations that you could have ignored? How much energy have you wasted fighting battles that were never worth fighting in the first place? When you learn to let go, to detach from meaningless conflicts, you start seeing life differently. You realize that most of what used to upset you was never really that important. You stop giving power to things that don't deserve it. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself in every conversation. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours to carry. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming selective with your energy. It's about deciding consciously what deserves your response and what doesn't. And most of the time, the answer is, it doesn't. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from attachment. And one of the biggest attachments people have is the need to be right, the need to be understood, the need to defend their opinions. But when you detach from that need, when you realize that your peace is more valuable than winning an argument, you gain something far greater than being right. You gain freedom. And this is where everything shifts. You're no longer a slave to reactions. You don't get dragged into other people's emotional chaos. You no longer waste hours justifying yourself to those who don't even want to understand you. You stop being affected by things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't actually matter. Of course, this doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. What it means is that you choose how you respond. You set your boundaries not by reacting, but by standing firm in your peace. Because nothing confuses and disarms an aggressor more than someone who refuses to engage. And the best part, when you master this, the people around you notice. Those who used to provoke you stop trying because they no longer get the reaction they crave. Those who used to argue with you lose interest because they see you're no longer emotionally invested. And over time, you start attracting a different kind of energy, one that matches the inner peace you've cultivated. This is the kind of peace that can't be faked. It's the kind of peace that comes from knowing that nothing external can take away what's inside you. It's a peace that doesn't depend on approval or validation or having the last word. And once you experience it, you'll never want to go back. Because the ultimate freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's not needing anything from anyone to be at peace. It's knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you remain unshaken. So next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, don't fight it. Just smile, stay still, and let them exhaust themselves. Let the noise pass like wind through the trees. Because when you stop giving unnecessary things your attention, you start gaining something far more valuable: your own peace. How to cultivate an unshakable mind. Ignoring what doesn't deserve your attention is just the first step. But the real transformation happens when you strengthen your mind to the point where you no longer even need to remind yourself to ignore things. You don't just resist reacting. You stop perceiving certain provocations as significant at all. The noise around you doesn't just affect you less. It ceases to be noise altogether. But how do you reach that state? Understanding the theory isn't enough. You have to train your mind daily, just like you would train your body if you wanted to become stronger and more resilient. Emotional stability is not something some people are simply born with. It's a skill. And like any skill, it requires practice and dedication. One of the first steps is to observe your mind without judgment. Every time you feel the urge to argue, to justify yourself, to react, pause. Don't focus on the external situation. Focus on what's happening inside you. What emotion is arising? Where is this need to respond coming from? Is it your ego? Is it insecurity? Is it fear of seeming weak? Identifying the root of your reaction is far more useful than forcing yourself to ignore something without understanding why it affects you in the first place. Another powerful practice is detachment. Buddhism constantly reminds us that nothing is permanent, not criticism, not conflicts, not even our own identity. Today, something might bother you deeply, but in a month or a year, will it still matter? Every time something upsets you, ask yourself, will this be important a year from now? If the answer is no, then why give it so much weight today? Meditation is another fundamental pillar. You don't need to sit for hours in complete silence. Just a few minutes a day to focus on your breath and bring your attention to the present moment can make a difference. Training yourself not to react to every intrusive thought is the same as training yourself not to react to every external provocation. If you can calm the storm inside you, no storm outside can shake you. It's also important to surround yourself with peace. You may not be able to control everything in your environment, but you can control what you consume, who you spend time with, and what you give importance to. If you're constantly exposed to arguments, negativity, and unnecessary conflicts, your mind will absorb that same noise. But if you choose to fill your life with calmness, meaningful conversations, and moments of silence, that peace will become your natural state. And here's something else. Learning to see life with humor. Not everything needs to be so serious. Many things that upset us only do so because we assign too much importance to them. But when you learn to laugh at certain conflicts, to see them as an unnecessary show you don't need to participate in, life becomes much lighter. This isn't about avoiding reality. It's about refusing to carry burdens that were never yours in the first place. Over time, you'll realize that external provocations stop affecting you, not because you're making a conscious effort to ignore them, but because they simply no longer resonate with you. There's nothing inside you that responds to them anymore, and that is when you reach an unshakable mind. Because in the end, it's not just about avoiding arguments or ignoring criticism. It's about living with a peace that depends on nothing and no one. It's about waking up each day knowing that nothing external has the power to take away your inner calm. It's about walking through the world without fear of what others think or say. And when you reach that point, you realize that true freedom isn't about controlling what happens outside. It's about mastering what happens inside. And that is the greatest achievement any human being can attain. Imagine how different your life would be if you no longer felt the need to react to every comment, every criticism, every attempt to provoke you. Imagine the kind of peace you could experience if nothing external had the power to disrupt your inner balance. Not because you're suppressing your emotions, not because you don't care, but because you've cultivated something far more powerful, control over where you place your attention. Most people go through life reacting to everything. They argue over things that don't matter, waste time trying to prove their point, and get emotionally exhausted defending themselves from opinions that don't deserve a second of their energy. But when you free yourself from this cycle, you unlock a level of tranquility that very few people ever get to experience. This isn't about letting others walk all over you. It's not about staying silent in moments where your voice is needed. It's about knowing the difference between what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It's about understanding that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opinion about you is worth addressing. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from how we respond to it. And this is where your true power lies. When you stop engaging in meaningless conflicts, when you stop letting others dictate your emotions, when you realize that you don't need validation from anyone to feel at peace, that's when you truly become free. So I invite you to take this practice into your daily life. The next time someone tries to drag you into an argument, pause. The next time you feel the urge to react, ask yourself, is this worth my peace? And if the answer is no, then choose to walk away. Choose your well-being over the temporary satisfaction of proving a point. Choose calmness over chaos. And if you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Share in the comments a phrase that represents what you're taking away from this video. Maybe it's something from the teachings we've discussed today, or maybe it's your own realization. What is one sentence that can remind you to stay centered, to not get hooked, to protect your energy? If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like it and subscribe. Every week, we explore ideas and wisdom that help us cultivate a life of peace, awareness, and true inner strength. And if you know someone who struggles with conflict, with reacting too quickly, with constantly getting pulled into negativity, share this with them. Sometimes, a simple shift in perspective is all it takes to change everything. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, for your presence, and for your willingness to grow. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, protect your peace, because nothing is more valuable than that.